Batman The Dark Knight number 24, written by Greg Hurwitz, art by Alex Maleev. So, do you want a Clayface origin? Because you're going to get a Clayface origin. So after the last issue where they captured Clayface, put him into Arkham, gave him a special containment cell, we see him just chilling there. And someone in the cell next to him, I don't think we ever get a name for him, is basically a huge fan of Basil Karlo from his acting days. He's like, dude, you were great. Oh, do that monologue. You were so fantastic in the role. And he starts doing the monologue. He says the whole thing. And immediately the guy's enraptured. He's like, oh, yes, bravo, bravo, encore, please, more, more, more. And Clayface is like, oh, man, I really like people clapping for me. This is good. I like being able to act for them. So he stands up and he does it again and he gets more into it. And we see weeks pass on. A couple of guards are getting Scarecrow out of his cell and he has along this little mirror of terror. I don't know. Regardless, as they're walking Scarecrow past Clayface's cell, he's performing and they're making fun of him, saying like, he's just regular Shakespeare over here. But Clayface looks into Scarecrow's mirror and sees something that just immediately shuts him up. And the guy asks, like, what was it? What did you see? And he's like, oh, I saw me when I was young, when I was ordinary. And we get flashback to him as a kid, and we see him basically just being ignored all throughout his childhood, all of his classmates and all that. It wasn't that he was bullied. It wasn't that he was like picked on. He just never made an impression on anyone at all. And he keeps on saying like, oh, maybe it's like the clothes I wear or something like that. Something to make me stand out. So he asks his parents, please, can I like get some clothes for a new outfit? Something that's going to make me stand out. And his parents can't afford it. But his mom eventually comes in and says, okay, here's a little bit of cash. Like, just make it last. So he goes down to the thrift shop, picks up a leather jacket and steals some sunglasses. And goes into school the next day. He's like, all right, here it is. The new Basil Karlo. And he walks in. Still nobody cares. Nobody gives him the time of day. And he's so upset by this, he returns the glasses with a sorry note. And his parents are like, look, just be yourself. That's the most important thing. And Basil's like, it's not enough. So he goes to auditions because earlier on some kids were saying, actors get all the babes. And he goes up and he does his audition. And the people are just like, all right, that's enough, thank you. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can do it better. He's just like, yeah, no, it's just, there's nothing special about you. And he keeps on doing auditions. He keeps on doing that in his adult life. And consistently and constantly he is told, you don't have that leading man factor and you're not like weird enough to be a character actor. So you just have nothing for you. You just don't have it. And so he hears that there is someone who can help him down in the depths of Gotham, and he makes his way down to a warehouse. And we reference back to Greg Hurwitz writing Penguin, Pain, and Prejudice, where Clayface opens up a door and the Joker is there being spanked by a sumo wrestler. Doesn't explain it here either, but Penguin shows up saying, no, not that door. I'm over here. So he says, yeah, what do you want? What can I do for you? And he explains to Penguin his problem, and Penguin leads him into this warehouse of a bunch of oddities that he has, and eventually comes across this little thing of clay. And they said that this was taken from a Native American site that had a history of quote-unquote skinwalkers. And this clay is supposedly the source of their power. It allowed them to change their form as they pleased. So he hands it over to him, and basically Basil's like, I can't pay for this. I have nothing I can do. He's like, oh, don't worry. I will collect one day, one way or another. So Basil takes the clay and it immediately like bonds itself to him when he gets home, and he is able to change his appearance, but it takes like a lot of concentration on his part. So he really focuses and practices until finally he becomes a big like hit at parties and stuff. He practices putting on different like people's faces until he makes his way to an audition. And they say, all right, Basil, show us the maniac. And so he puts on a performance and he's able to change his face into a horrifying looking face. And everyone's like, that's it. You're hired. You're in. So finally he's on a set and he does this performance. It's the same monologue he was performing for the guy in Arkham. And everyone's just like, amazing. Bravo. You want to go get drinks? Have my babies? Do whatever. So he starts getting bigger roles. He gets his like hands in the cement on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's making money like crazy. Everything's going great for him. And then he realizes one day that he's able to absorb the DNA of other people just by touching them, and then he can like store it away and use it later on. So he starts trying to get all, touch as many people as he can, just a little bit, just so he can have that repertoire of people he can pull from. And then finally the Penguin comes and collects, and he's like, look, I need you to do some jobs for me. And he is forced to basically kill people, take their appearances, and steal stuff so that nobody thinks any the wiser. And he at first hated the killing, but after a while he's like, well, if I just say it's a character, then it's okay. So he puts on this character of Clayface, the killer. And it starts eating away at him. Eventually one day, everyone's waiting for him on set, but he's just not able to concentrate enough. It's eating away too much that he isn't able to hold his form. And he basically tells him, screw you, I'm not doing this. And he gets blacklisted from acting in general for being difficult. So at that point, he consistently does more work for the Penguin for jobs and then starts doing stuff on his own. And yeah, that's how he led to Clayface nowadays. And he's recounting all this to the inmate next to him until finally he says, I as Clayface, I felt like I, as Basil Carlo, didn't exist anymore. But that was until I met you. And he looks over at the inmate. The inmate's dead. The inmate just died at some point in the middle of all this. So we see him being wheeled out, and that's when Basil's like, I am overcome by grief, but I realize I got to get out there. I got to be seen again. So he gets some food at a normal feeding time, and then he acts like he is choking on it. And immediately the doctors come in saying like, oh, get the containment tube around him. We got to take care of him as best we can. And he keeps on hacking up pieces of clay. And as the containment tube comes down, he manages to get one tiny piece of clay, barely even noticeable, outside the containment tube. So when the doctors leave, he's able to maneuver it, able to move it into place to make a crack in the containment tube. And he says, you'll learn, all of you, you'll learn how special I am, and you'll be sorry. So one issue of Clayface all locked up, and now he's out again. So yeah, I think this is just as good as origin as the one that I'm familiar with. Well, with him being an actor, and then he uses this special effects like clay makeup stuff. I think that this is very well done. I don't think that there's any reason that this shouldn't be an origin that can be held on to for a long period of time. Beyond that, I mean, Alex Maleev art is fantastic. It's a bit weird for me that it is linked so closely with Penguin, but I mean, it makes sense if there are other villains in the city that they are going to end up spawning some villains themselves. So yeah, I'm okay with it. It's just something I wasn't familiar with. Overall, this is probably I'd say 7.5. I think it's good. You know what? I'm going to bump it up to the 8, honestly, because it is just that art. Alex Maleev's art is really fantastic. I really cannot overstate that enough. So 8 for this. Looking forward to seeing what Clayface does on the outside once again.